little bit here, but the Oilers, similar to Toronto, they were awful early in that hockey game. They were awful in overtime as well. It was just not a great game for the Oilers, but their star players bailed them out late and were able to pump or fuel that comeback. But for the Oilers still, I mean, the comeback, sure, it was great. It was electric. Rogers Place was rocking for a few minutes. But if for the Oilers, that can't happen in a big game like that. They need to show up better than that.
Yeah, you're right, Tyler. There's no excuse there for the Oilers to come out and be that unprepared for Game 5 on their home ice with a chance to take a series lead against an undermanned Kings team without a Drew Doughty on their back end, especially after the way that they were taken to the woodshed in Game 4, shut out in LA to send the series back to Edmonton. I just don't see it. I don't understand where the overconfidence for this Oiler team comes in, thinking that they're good enough to come out and play that way, even against a team like the Kings being undermanned, because the truth is they're not. They don't have the experience to draw on. They don't have the depth to really play that way. And if you're going to rely on your stars in Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid to bail you out after trailing 4-1 in that game, it's not going to happen every time. And they almost pulled it off. And I think in a way, the fact that they didn't is probably a little bit better for the Oilers in terms of a learning lesson moving forward. They've got a lot of work to do to just draw even in this series. And we'll touch on Darnell Nurse and the hearing that he's about to have. But the Oilers potentially being without their top defenseman for Game 6 looms large. And a team that, really should have been a lot better on home ice. I just don't know what the excuse is going into Game 5.
Yeah, there just absolutely aren't any for the Oilers team. That was maybe the best I've ever seen Connor McDavid play, and it was all for nothing as they lose in overtime. The other thing that caught my attention was on the OT winner. I mean, Duncan Keith just simply couldn't keep up with Adrian Kempe, but to start overtime, Jay Woodcroft went with Brett Kulak and Duncan Keith at 5-on-5. That duo had only played a grand total of 45 seconds together at 5-on-5 in the first 4 games of that series. I thought that was just a really odd decision to start OT and to go with those guys when you have last change. And this was also the worst game of the series for Mike Smith, who probably wants 3 of those goals he allowed back.
Yeah, and there was an ugly turnover from Kulak a bit earlier in the game as well, where he just kind of threw it up the wall that ended up being pounced on pretty quickly by the Kings. Just a lot of holes in the Oilers game, and I think these 2 games have exposed it. I thought, Game 1 was really interesting in the way that, the Oilers kind of, you look at the first 3 games, they shot themselves in the foot in Game 1 and were so much better in Games 2 and 3, outscoring the LA Kings 14-2, that you're thinking they're comfortable in the driver's seat. And I think the real answer here is, Tyler, that they probably got a little bit too comfortable in that driver's seat, and now they find themselves hanging on for dear life attached to the bumper.